Makilala, a Filipino-American talk show in New York. On October 11, a transgender Filipino woman was killed in a sexual encounter in Olongapo City, northwest of Manila, thousands of miles away from New York. But for a number of reasons, the death of Jennifer Laude shook the Filipino community to its core. 1, the suspect is an American serviceman. 2, the victim is a transgender woman. And 3, the manner of death is shockingly horrific. Today, we would like to talk about this and other issues relating to how we as a community view transgender men and women. Joining me are my co-hosts, Rachelle Ocampo and Jennifer Feurer, and our guest co-host, Carolyn Joyce Peña. Joyce is a person of all trades. She is a soprano, she is a caterer, and she is also a street activist. Welcome, Joyce.
Thank you.
Our guests are familiar to many of you. Anywhere there is a street action on LGBT rights, they are sure to be there. Irma Bajar is Program Coordinator at Aude Lorde Project and the current International Relations Officer of Gabriela, USA. Welcome, Irma.
Thank you, so happy to be here.
Great. Chelle Lhuillier is a beauty queen and a transgender rights advocate for the Human Rights Campaign for Greater New York area. Yes, it's possible to be both a beauty queen and an activist. Welcome, Chelle.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, nice. Let's start with Chelle. Chelle, were you surprised at the Filipino community's reaction to the death of Jennifer Laude?
Yes, very much. Actually, I got really shocked and I felt so disappointed and outraged. And this is another setback in the LGBT community. And it's really hard because, you know, a lot of transgender people are getting killed because of what they are.
That's right. Irma, do you think the reaction would be less emotional if the victim was not a transgender woman?
I think that, one, we have to recognize that it was a hate crime. I think that when it was on the media, right, a lot of what the media was really talking about was Jennifer's identity as a trans woman.
That's
right. And so I think that there's a lot of issues that surround this particular issue. One, exactly what you had said, it was the suspect, right, is a U.S. serviceman and is still in the hands of the U.S. government and not actually under the government of the Philippines, right? So the first and foremost is to really identify Jennifer as a trans woman, identify that it was a hate crime that was actually produced because of U.S. military being in the soil of the Philippines.
That's right.
I have a question, Chelle. When people look at you, I mean, you're such a gorgeous woman. Are you shocked when they find out that you're a transgender? And then how do you deal with such ignorance when they're like shocked that, what do you mean you're not a woman? I mean, you know what I mean? See, I can even speak the right language.
Well, it really depends on the approach. If it was a compliment, then I feel really flattered. But if it's kind of annoying, I'm just going to ignore and just smile at them.
But can you blame them? Is that pure ignorance, or is it are they racist in that way, saying or bigot in that way?
Oh no,
saying,
I guess
I don't
it's
know
just
how to
ignorance.
react.
I guess it's just the lack of education and a lack of knowledge of transgender people, and this is the reason why we are here, because we would like to educate them about LGBTQ community, that there is a transgender part of this community.
Right, and then you mentioned LGBTQ, like Irma. I mean, there was a time when you can't say the Q word, and now you're telling us that it's okay to say LGBTQ. Right. So there's more confusion in in the community. So can you expand on that one?
Yeah, you know, I think the universal term that is used is LGBT, right? The Q really came in the early 90s when a group of LGBT activists reclaimed the word queer, right? And queer really is the umbrella term of LGBT, but also for anybody, it doesn't force anyone to have a particular identity or sexual orientation. So it's even outside of that, right? Because who says that we have to be either a man, a woman, or even identify as trans, or the different types of sexual orientation? It really is, we don't need to fit in a particular box. We can identify and love whoever we want to love, right? So the queer is really that umbrella term where you can determine at any given time in your life, right? And it's not about like, oh, sexuality is fluid or gender is fluid. It really is about self-determination of who you are.
I have a question about some of the Philippine actors and actresses are coming out right now and saying that, are talking about their sexual orientation. Like Isa Segura, she came out recently and she said that she actually identified between what was sexual orientation, and there was a difference between that with gender identification. And she said, he said, I am not a gay lesbian. I entirely love women. Can you expand on that, on what he means by that?
Were you talking about Isa Segura, Joyce? And I think you used two different pronouns. So see, we are confused here about pronouns. Can you explain to us, Irma, what is the right terminology for all these things?
Well, you know, I think in terms of even Isa saying whether Isa identifies either as gay or lesbian or transgender, I think it's up to the person, right? And I think that however they want to be, you know, in the Philippines, you know, we know that pronouns, it's either just siya.
Yeah.
Here, you know, we say, what's your preferred gender pronoun? It could be she, it could be he, it could be masculine and or feminine pronouns, or even they. Some people even want to just be identified as just their name, right? So I think really it's about like honoring and respecting the individual however they want to be identified as their gender and or sexual orientation, right?
Yeah, I remember I went to a meeting for International Women's Day with you, and one of the first questions that they asked, other than my name, was, what is your preferred gender pronoun?
Right.
And I was like, that never been asked for me. That's kind of strange. I guess I identify as she.
Right.
And it just never crossed my mind. So I think that that is a good question to start practicing, just so that it's more in our daily
So
comfortable
Irma
life.
was saying that you can identify as something else, but you may have a different sexual orientation. And again, please explain.
Well, so there's two things, right?
Yeah.
There's gender identity, right? So we're assigned a particular sex at birth, right? So my assignment at birth, right, was that I'm female based on my particular body parts that I have, right? So that was my assignment, right?
So aren't you saying that you're born a girl? Isn't that what you're saying?
Well, what people are identifying as girl and boy for different people, why would our genital parts define who our identity is, right? Our gender identity. So gender identity is more if you identify as either male or female or trans or either neither, right? Some people are gender nonconforming. They don't identify as either male or female. And then your sexual identity and or sexual orientation is basically, right, who you're attracted to, right? So even I could be someone that is either bisexual that likes both men and women, and or I could identify as queer, or I can identify as lesbian that only likes women. The point is that it shouldn't matter, right? The point is that it's up to you, right?
Maybe that's the reason why. I'm going back to Jennifer Lau. You said it shouldn't matter. So some of the people said, why didn't she say that she's transgender woman? Because then maybe this would not have happened.
Chelle was saying something about how this could have been prevented if Jennifer or whoever else is about to get into that kind of particular encounter would have said certain things, right?
That's
Chelle,
correct.
yeah.
Actually, a lot of transgender women are having this difficulty of divulging who they really are. And it takes a lot of guts and courage.
Why?
I guess it's because, you know, there is a conflicting position wherein you were born as a male and then you were dressed as a female and you were so beautiful. And it's really hard to admit to the person that you are with whether you are a transgender or not.
Okay.
But the reality is it's very it's necessary that transgender people should really identify themselves and be true for who they are and what they are, because that will lessen the susceptibility to hostile environment and, you know, hate crimes.
And you said that there are some coded statements that they can probably
Yeah, what
say.
is some advice
What
that you
are
could
some of
give?
those things or statements that they can
Oh
say?
yes, actually, there are subtle ways by which you can identify yourself as a transgender woman or a transgender man. Like in the case of transgender women, you can say like, oh, I'm the best of both worlds, or I'm a special girl, or I'm a TS.
Can you
Simply
just
as
say
that.
I'm a transgender?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But you have to
But
tell
if you're-
whether you are a transgender man or a transgender
But if
woman.
you're thinking about it, you're about to encounter, you're in bed and you're about to undress, like, and you don't tell that other significant person until that moment because
Right.
you've been so nervous. Like, that is so stressful. I could just imagine.
I think that has to be made clear while they're still
Before.
having drinks, right? While they're in the process of getting to know each other. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a perfect timing for everything, and if you feel already comfortable that you wanted to know that to let that person know what exactly who you are, then you can just simply tell outright, like be upfront.
See, is it upsetting just to agree to people that says Jennifer kind of caused this because she didn't state up front that she's a transgender? So the Marine or the U.S. soldier that was surprised. I mean, murder is murder, but then he was surprised. He didn't know how to react. I mean, he went psycho. So
That is
assuming-
still
but
not
that's
a reason for
I know it's
murder
not,
to be
and
committed,
I'm
right?
saying it's not a reason to be murder, but but then there are people that saying, but he didn't say. You should have said something in the beginning.
But how do you
Should
know that
people
she
say
didn't? How do you know that she didn't? Because
But
she could have
most
said
people,
it. She
most
could have
people.
said it.
My cousin who does community training, seminar training to a lot of people in the Philippines, and she tells them, like all the men, okay, when you go out there, make sure you check, because there are a lot of women that look like they're women, but they're not women until you lift their skirts. So you have to ask them. So I'm not sure I think we should tell the transgender, even though you feel like you're assigned this body and you're not, you're embracing this, other people may not agree to it, and you have to be open, and you have so that you don't have that violence. I'm not saying it's okay for somebody to kill somebody. Period. It's not.
I think it's a matter of education. Do you think it is something that
okay,
has
pause.
to be?
I think it's right. So what you're all saying is that every trans person has to tell people about them being trans, right? If you switch it around and say every straight person, right, or people who are not trans has to be like, by the way, I'm straight, this is my body parts that I have, right? Because
There is a difference, Irma. We're not about to engage in a sexual encounter. I just want to make that clear. Because you're
that's
going to go into something intimate, that's a different territory. There has to be a different kind of conversation.
So
there.
Cristina, do
Right?
you say that every time that you're going to be intimate with someone, do you say that, oh, do you have a penis?
I think I will get into that conversation.
But you know what I'm saying?
I need to
That's-
make clear who this person is. Yeah.
But I think what I'm saying is that
I get what you're
It's a
saying.
violation of not privacy, but it's a violation of saying that, and assuming the fact that Pemberton didn't know that she was trans, right? We're making this assumption, right? It was a hate crime because
It was a hate
she
crime.
was trans,
Yes.
right? I think what we're doing right now is that we're policing people's bodies. And that's a form of violation that actually happens to trans communities. Trans people, a lot of people don't realize whether or not you can afford or have access to having any surgical, in terms of breast procedures, correct, is meaning that you're trans. A lot of people who even identify as trans still look, right,
Yeah.
in terms of how they're assigned at birth. So people are defining that, okay, you're only trans if you are male to female or female to male, where the word transgender is an umbrella term of actually not particularly male or female.
That's
right?
why they actually changed that law recently in the city where I actually think it's birth certificates. Did you hear about this? Where they, do you know more about it? I only know that like if you're a transgender, you don't actually need to have a gender assignment or surgery.
Right, they
in order
changed
to
that.
change,
Right.
in order to say change your birth certificate, because you could change every single other document but your birth certificate. But now they changed the law just recently that they could change it. So
Going
it's-
forward with what happened in the Philippines, the response that Aquino gave, that he did, if you guys heard about it, during the
President
funeral, that was quite appalling to some people. I just want to know how.
What was his response?
Well, his response, well, they had the funeral, the wake, and he said, quote unquote,
He is not visiting.
what was he saying? He said that,
I think he said something like he's not visiting
why
because
should I invite, why should I go to a person's
yeah.
wake of a person I don't even know? So do you think he's leaning forward towards the ignorance of the whole situation?
I think,
Or he's just standing by with the U.S. with that?
well, that's right. That's a good question, right? Because I think the disappointment of the president of the Philippines, of him not attending or even acknowledging the death of Jennifer Laude, is the difference is that the murder happened with a U.S. troop, right? Where Aquino is actually not really saying, you actually killed a member of the Filipino community, right? And because of the visiting forces agreement, right? And because of EDCA, basically, he is basically giving all, like Pemberton is in the U.S. government custody, right? So what that says to me is that actually the president isn't even sticking up for his people or saying that you came into my country, you're still in my country, and you killed one of our people, because he only really cares about the U.S. relationships with the Philippines. So that is a resemblance of where our president is.
So
right?
you think that's a political statement? That's not an anti-transgender statement?
I think it's both. I think it's both.
You think he would have reacted differently if it was?
I think whether or
Was it?
not Jennifer was trans and or straight, the fact that the president didn't intervene for his country as the Philippine president says a lot in terms of who he's loyal to. And so it seems and it looks that he is not for the people. He's actually for the relationship of the United States as this unequal relationship continues.
Were you surprised at the really hateful comments from the Filipinos and from some Filipino Americans to the Laude murder, to the killing of Jennifer Laude?
What would be an example of like a hateful
Really,
message?
like she deserved it, she asked for it, those kinds of comments.
That
Chelle?
is very unfair.
Yeah.
We don't know yet what really transpired
True.
on that incident. So I think it would be better if we just wait until the court has finally processed everything, and we just hope that we will be able to make a conviction if it is Pemberton who really did that.
So what should be the push for Filipino community to be asking the people who are in charge, whether it be the government or within ourselves, hold us accountable of, I guess, changing the views of transgender women's rights or transgender rights? Like what should the Filipino community be pushing for?
Oh, just like what we are doing here in America, in New York, we push for equal rights and everything, like everything that will benefit LGBTQ community.
Do you think there should be more discussions like this back home in Manila? Or
It's probably harder in the Philippines. It's such religious and such
very traditionalist
traditional.
country, yeah.
This is all something new. So I guess more discussions, more open discussion like this.
And I love how we have also more symbols of people to look up to, like Gina Rosero. She's beautiful symbol of stepping out of her circle. She was here in New York and she didn't tell anyone until like this past year, and it was a beautiful opening of the transgender community. So I'm really glad that.
And I think the fact is that trans people have been in existence all our lives. It's a fact, right? There's always been gay men, there's always been lesbians, there's always been bisexuals. Trans people have always existed in the Philippines and in the United States. With folks like Gina Rosero and of course like
And
Chelle,
Chelle, yeah.
right? The visibility is one thing, but
true.
I want us to really challenge ourselves, right? Because for some people who can't be, beauty queens or have, be a model like Gina Rosero, what we're really looking at, right, even Jennifer Laude, is that trans people, they all look different, right? Some people think that, oh, okay, you're trans because you're beautiful, like, oh, you look so good.
Yeah.
That actually is an act of violence in a way, saying that you actually don't pass because you still look like a man, and that's hurtful, right? So people think what's accepting is what's beautiful. People think what's accepted is, like, for example, for trans men, oh, you're not a male because you still have your boobs.
Yeah,
But what if you can't access, surgery? What if you don't have resources? What if you're homeless, right? Because a lot of trans folks in the United States, in the Philippines, are unemployed because of discrimination, are homeless, are forced to do sex work as a means to survival, so they're marginalized, isolated, and oppressed because of a lot of discrimination of people not seeing them for who they are or not actually being valued, right? True. So if you even think about what happened in even Ferguson, everyone mobilized for Mike Brown, right? Last year, Ela Nettles, who was a trans woman who was murdered, there was no mass mobilization.
That's right. I'm really surprised at that.
People are not valuing the lives of trans women, right? So what does that say?
Let's take a short break from this very serious discussion.
Sorry, I got heated
up. Very educational and enlightening. I have just the right musical number to break the seriousness of our chat. Let's welcome the teachers of Unified, the United Federation of Film Educators.
Yeah!
And the United Federation of Film Educators. Tita Lumen, the first time we saw you perform, we knew we had to have you on Makilala. What a beautiful, inspiring, and happy and jaw-dropping dance number. Thanks so much for gracing our show. And Chelle, in closing, we'd like to know, how has your life changed since you came out openly as a transgender woman?
It has really changed my life dramatically. From being just like a transgender beauty queen, socializing and attending parties and coronation balls. Now
You're still doing that, right?
Yes, I still do.
Okay.
But now I've been engaged in a lot of advocacies, particularly for the LGBTQ rights and equality. So I joined Human Rights Campaign of Greater New York as a volunteer under the Diversity Committee. And
to go to Irma, Irma, do you think the education on gender rights should start with the young? And when do you actually start? Do you start when they start asking questions?
I think that you should start as soon as possible. You know, I think that we shouldn't learn just from what's on the media, but we should really educate ourselves as people who are in the community and also who are allies to really think about what does it mean to support trans people in our community.
Okay, thanks so much. We've come to the end of another informative episode. I would like to thank everyone, Rachelle, Jen, Joyce, Irma, and Chelle, for having this very open, candid, and respectful conversation. Thanks to our guests for sharing a part of their lives with our viewers. Until our next episode of Makilala, thank you for watching.